It's my pleasure to welcome Tal Tsfany to the show. We've had people on from the Ayn Rand Institute before, and he is now president and CEO of the Ayn Rand Institute. He's former CEO of Kidam, the largest private education company in Israel before it was sold to Kaplan University. He's co-founder of the Ayn Rand Center in Israel. I took the Objetivism courses at the Ayn Rand Institute back when I lived in Irvine, California. So Tal, welcome. It's good to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Good.
I would just say that, in order to know a little bit of who I am, I have a pretty significant tech background and kind of in the middle between my Israeli. I moved to the U.S. in 2006 with a technology company and then helped start another company and then been in Silicon Valley for 5 years and so on and so forth.
That's fantastic, because really what you're doing with the Ayn Rand Institute now under your leadership is kind of changing the focus and making it more accessible. You just created an app that is getting a lot of downloads very quickly. You're doing courses in Prague and hopefully all over the world to spread the word about objectivism. We live in a pretty strange time. These American colleges, the universities have become oppressive regimes against free speech. They are so far left, it's mind-boggling. What do you make of all this?
I think politics and what we're seeing in the culture is a reflection of undercurrents that are more philosophical in nature. And I think Rand opened my mind to really understand how we think, how we operate. We're basically organisms that are trying to find meaning and trying to do the right thing for us. We're not born like a squirrel knowing how to collect nuts and find a hole in a tree, right? If you leave us alone, we'll die. So we have to program ourselves. I think what we see in politics right now, what's happening in colleges, is just a reflection of, or a result of, let's call it progressive philosophies that have detached us from reality and the real nature of who we are.
Yeah.
And that has a lot of issues. It resulted in collectivism and communism, and now it's taking different shapes and forms. But I think the tragedy, to be more specific of what I see, talking to thousands of students all over the world, is this generational gap that we have right now of people all the way from 16, 17 to 25 having no idea what life is about and pursue their happiness.
Well, we live in this world it's like this dystopian world of apathy and luxury, and it's just, we'll get into that. But, I'd like to clear something up first. And I think when I came to the Ayn Rand Institute many years ago, and I studied Objectivism after reading Atlas Shrugged, such a profound book. It's just life-changing. Everybody says that. And I don't agree with everything Ayn Rand says or believes, but a lot of it I definitely do agree with. There's this misconception, I believe, and when I had Joran Brook, your predecessor, on the show, I believe I asked him this question too. I'd love to ask you. On the political spectrum, I think most people believe Ayn Rand would be some sort of, and it's really, this is the wrong description in and of itself, but like a right-wing libertarian. But she actually, I believe, called the libertarians the hippies of the right, if I'm not mistaken. So she's not really a libertarian, she wasn't. She wouldn't be a Democrat or a socialist or a collectivist or a communist. She hated communism with a passion, and she was obviously very right about that. What would her political beliefs be?
They would be objective. They would be scientific. I think she creates a whole different dimension that we're not seeing in that spectrum. And that's, before tripping over Atlas Shrugged and understanding with the role of philosophy in one's life, I thought that it's all in physics. I loved physics. So it's like asking, where would you put Einstein in the spectrum of physics before Einstein? He created a whole new dimension that people didn't see exist.
That's fair.
I think that's what Rand is offering, at least from my perspective. She would agree with the left that, we should leave you alone to be gay or whatever you want to be. She'll agree with the right that economically you should leave people alone, and she advocated, let's say, fair capitalism. She really understood why we as human beings need freedom in everything we do. And she separated out force and coercion to a whole different dimension that you should not trade with. You just try to remove it as far away as from human interaction. This is where she disagrees with libertarians and the anarcho-capitalists and all of that, because they don't understand the nature of why we need freedom and things like that. So you're right to say she doesn't fall anywhere. The right loves to hate her for some of her ideas, and the left loves to hate her about some of her ideas. She doesn't fit anywhere, but this is how I see it.
I know it's interesting because, I have friends who are like these anarcho-capitalists. I mean, she wouldn't be in favor of that either, would she?
Completely. She thought that the most dangerous are the people that are advocating for freedom from the wrong philosophical foundation, not understanding the nature of force and coercion and how it disrupts our ability to do what we do. The means of survival is our ability to think and integrate the world into our consciousness.
Right.
She proves, I think, she laid out a whole philosophy. It's like a scientific progression. You integrate one step after the other to come to the conclusion that in the realm of society, you and I need to trade voluntarily. I cannot force you because I basically disrupt your ability to be human if I, choke you or I punch you in the face or I just threaten you to kill you if you don't do what I say.
Right. Rand would not approve of any vigilantism. I believe, through her reading, she loved the court system and the legal system. That she said that is one of the major roles of government is to provide a court system, because if you don't have the law, you have the point of a gun. That's the choice.
That brings the worst out of us. And so she said there are three things a government should do. Police to protect us from the inside, army from the outside, and a court system, which is the rule of law, to, resolve conflicts in a nonviolent way. But in no way she advocates dealing with, trading, like she thinks it's gang warfare. If you start thinking about, free market for armies and police and so on and so forth. There's a reason why we have countries. There's a reason why we have armies and police and rule of law. And that's it. The rest, she says, leave us alone.
Yeah, it's a great philosophy. It's very true. Talk to us about happiness. I assume you're familiar with, and you're probably a fan of, Dennis Prager and Prager University and so forth.
I think they're doing a good job. I don't think that I agree on everything with them.
Nobody's going to agree with everything. Listen, I don't agree with Ayn Rand on everything either, okay? But one of the things that Prager talks about is he does on his radio show, The Happiness Hour, right? And he says that, look, happy people make the world a better place. If you want to contribute to humanity and be altruistic, the first goal should be to be happy, because then you'll contribute more. And so I know Ayn Rand would not say be altruistic necessarily.
Yeah, I think it's a utilitarian kind of point of view of you should be happiness because it serves a higher goal. I don't think there's a higher goal. And that's the revolutionary perspective that Rand continues from the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, which is the life is about you. She has this wonderful definition for happiness. And she says happiness is that state of consciousness that proceeds from one's achievement of their own, I add, rational goals. Goals. She says goals. I find that fascinating. She basically says there are two things you need to do. One is to define your goals. They have to be rational. They have to be aligned with who you are, what you love, what you're good at, what people want to buy from you. And second is an effective way to achieve it. Because if you don't achieve it and you fail over and over again, you won't get to this result, which is a state of consciousness of, wow, I'm pretty effective. I'm successful. Things are working according to plan. I'm in a state of happiness. It's a state of mind. And it's beautiful how Jefferson put it, like it's a continuous pursuit. Why? Because goals change over time. I change over time. I become more specialized in specific areas. And I think that's what it is all about. It is about figuring out first, what is your central purpose? And she has this concept, central purpose, that I haven't heard anywhere. It's like, in my world of business, everything is clear. I got a mission for the company. I have a clear plan. I know exactly what to focus on and how to measure it. When it comes to my happiness, it's pretty blurry. What am I? And what she says, the way I interpret it, is take that level of clarity that we've developed in business and apply it to your life. And that's a fascinating idea. So I can talk a little bit more about how to find this or how to discover the discovery process. But, happiness is hard work.
You're right. I would like you to talk about that. But, I want to say one other thing. Try and talk during the interview. Just leave a little more time, because I want to ask you about something that very few people really talk about when it comes to Ayn Rand. And that is her views on romantic relationships and even sexuality. She's got some different angles on that. It's kind of interesting, and I haven't studied it very much, but since that becomes such a part of happiness, I think it's worth throwing that in, not just about achieving goals and, fulfillment, but, it's certainly romantic relationships and that kind of thing. It's part of the equation for sure. So yeah, tell us more.
First, I have to say, I'm not a philosopher, so, I don't presume to know things.
You're a practical philosopher. You're a tech guy. Yeah.
They call a professional, it's like an intellectual professional, not a professional intellectual.
Got it.
But I would say this, I think it is all the same. It all integrates to one point, which is values. You are pursuing values. It could be spiritual values. It could be material values. For me, and a lot of people don't like to think about it this way, but love is a spiritual goal. It's a spiritual value. Figuring out who is that person that reflects and projects that sense of life. She calls it the sense of life that you are attracted to. I think love is a goal, is a value that you pursue. If you are successful, if you see this beautiful woman and you are attracted to her and you get to know her and she's not that smart, then you'll find a way that, you'll find out that you're not that attracted. And then you find another person and she is amazing. And then she becomes a value, right? And then you end up marrying her and having kids with her. She's an enormous value. And you need to continue to pursue that value. As we know, you have to maintain and sustain relationships. It's a spiritual trade. And that people don't like to equate love and relationship and sex to trade. But it is exactly the same thing. I'm just looking out to the world as a valuer. What do I love about this? And I go and pursue this. If it could be my wife and my relationship with her, it could be my business partner and how we succeed in making more money. For me, it's all the same. Look at the squirrel. I mentioned the squirrel before, right? What is he trying to do?
Survive, but
more, collect enough nuts and mate and create really the nicest hole they can find in a tree. They're pursuing their own values and they are programmed, if you will, by nature to go and pursue those values. The thing about humans is that we're not coming to this world programmed. This is why philosophy is so important. It's like our operating system. If you have an operating system which aligns with reality and how the nature of our consciousness and the nature of reality and the relationship between them, you'll be very successful. And that brings me to the second thing, which is one is finding your values and second, how to go achieve it. And she developed a whole system of morality, which could be reduced to principles to live your life. Have integrity, treat people with justice, be an independent thinker, be rational, be productive, give a lot of attention to your productive work, but this is a huge source of self-esteem and happiness. And that code of morality, I think, was proven in the American system to work. And people thrive and create, and they don't create for someone else. This is where I don't like...
They create for themselves.
Exactly. That's what it is. I think when people talk to me about, Rand and philosophy, I said, look, the first thing I care about is myself and you. And the question is, do you know how to live life? Are you happy? By the way, if you're super happy and fulfilled and everything's working, just continue to do what you're doing. But a lot of people have issues with anxiety and lack of self-esteem and issues, and they don't understand why things just don't align in their head and a lot of contradictions. That tells you have a problem. I think it's a philosophical problem. But as you can see, I'm very passionate about the application of philosophy, specifically objectivism, into one's life.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about the trade before. The Ayn Rand detractors would say, those objectivists, aren't they just so selfish and self-centered? But like you gave the example and talked about romantic relationships, is it a quid pro quo? Is it all a value for value trade? Is that really what it is? Or just elaborate on that a little bit.
Yes. What else is there? Let me ask you, what else?
I'm just playing devil's advocate. I agree.
With my wife, let's take I trade value for value with her. She's amazing. She's beautiful and she's life-loving and she is benevolent and she's an interior designer. I love everything about it. The reason why, I was concerned about noises around because she's fixing our house now and I'm excited about it. I am getting something from her. And I am the center of the universe, meaning she is very valuable to me because of me. She's not valuable to you because you don't know her.
Right.
And so what is selfishness? You have one life to live. It's going to end pretty soon. And you need to make the most out of it. And you need to care about this thing. So Ayn Rand defines selfishness in a specific way, and most people see it as what she calls a package deal. Two things bundled together. Either buy those two or not. And she says that's wrong. Separate the fact that you should be self-centered, self-interested, without the lying, stealing liar who tramp over people and push them aside because they want, what she's advocating is rational self-interest. If I want to trade with you, if I want to have a society around me that I want to live in, why steal and cheat, right? That's a very bad strategy. So that's, I would say, if I'm selfless, then I would cheat and steal. Mm-hmm. So she breaks down this package deal into two things. Take the rational self-interest, but that's really controversial. It means your life is yours. It's not your mom's. It's not your sister's.
And it's certainly not the government's.
Again, the government is there to do the same thing, which is to help me center my life around my life and not have people interfere with my life.
It's just amazing when you talk on the macro political perspective and you look at the concept of taxation, for example, and all of these special interest groups that want to take from the rich, and as long as they earned that money ethically and legally, it's theirs. I mean, this whole concept of wealth redistribution it's literally immoral. You look at someone like Bernie Sanders or AOC or any of these politicians on the left, but hey, they're on the right too. It's not, it's only a small amount of difference. And what they're advocating is literally immoral. I mean, it is unbelievable that this is entertained in the public square. I can't believe it.
Well, I don't think you should be surprised, because if you
I'm not really surprised, but
if the morality is altruism, if the morality is good for others, if I'm being good, if I sacrifice or give away my money and not a producer who's profit seeking and goal oriented and so on and so forth, you should be surprised, because as I said, people want to do good. Mm-hmm. And when I meet a radical leftist, I'm like, wait, what are you trying to achieve? And then you say, okay, I want to challenge your goal. I don't want to challenge, the fact that you're stealing from other people. If they're smart enough, they'll see that the problem is realizing that if I am not living for myself, it's a destructive, deadly philosophy. In the end, we'll all die for each other. Yeah, that's the way I see it. Politically, you can see it in many different ways. But if I could just have a rational discussion with someone who wants to take my money away as taxes and say, okay, wait, is that money going to do good for anyone else who didn't produce it? I claim that it'll actually destroy them.
Oh, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And something interesting, my mother went to Berkeley, graduated from Berkeley. Listen to this combination of layers, right? She graduated from Berkeley in the 60s with a degree in social welfare, became a social worker for a few years, and saw how giving away government money, that was her job, doling out the government money to these families, just destroyed them. It made them worse. They became inferior people that could not sustain their lives. They became weaker and weaker as they were more coddled. You give more stuff. I mean, everybody knows this is true. Look at what happens when you spoil a child. They become a disaster, right? You want to make your children strong and independent. You don't want to spoil them and ruin them. Of course, the same is true on a societal level. Interestingly, after all of that, my mother would agree with everything we're talking about here. I mean, it's an amazing combo. You can't get much worse than Berkeley in the 60s, social welfare, and then social worker. I'll tell you something else interesting she shared with me. She said that, interestingly, in the 60s at Berkeley, people were walking around with copies of The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. Mm-hmm. And I said, why? That doesn't seem like... And she said, it was just cool. They were reading Ayn Rand.
Yeah, let me tell you even something. I can compete with your mother because I was born in Beersheba, which is a southern city in Israel. But then at the age of 9, we moved to a kibbutz. Do you know what a kibbutz is?
Well, a kibbutz is the only example where communism is sort of working on the planet.
Well, it's not. Right? I'm a living proof that it's not working. And by the way,
but it's working a little bit. Liberals will argue that the kibbutz works. Okay.
A because they really were focused. Like, if you treat people like ants, they will produce like ants, right? And so anyway, but I completely agree with you. I will give you even something more deeper than that. When someone, a member of the kibbutz, which is a commune, right, where I was actually not my parents' property. I was raised in a kid's house. And I got to see my parents like 4 to 8 p.m. every day. But the interesting thing is that everybody shared the property and so on. Everybody's equal. But when a mother of one of the members got sick with cancer and he went around to ask for a little bit of money from each one, nobody gave him money. Nobody. Because we're already sacrificing our lives for you. You work in the laundry room. You work in the laundry room. I'm managing the factory and we're making the same money. I'm already sacrificing for you. So it brings the worst out of people. There was like horrible relationships. People hated each other in the
Really,
kibbutz.
that's interesting. Capitalism is human nature. It's the most natural thing in the world to trade. It's like breathing. It's just natural. I mean, from the beginning of time, people have traded. They've gone to markets. People have developed specialized skills, and that's what brought us this incredible modern world. If we didn't have people specializing, we would have none of this. But to your comment about the everybody's equal in the kibbutz, well, hey, George Orwell in Animal Farm would say some animals are more equal than others, right?
That's the problem.
Yeah,
but I think I want to take your point even a little deeper. Yes, we are producers. We shape the world in our vision. This is the power of this machine here, the conceptual faculty we own. Right. But why are we doing this? We're doing this to advance our own life. We're born egoists. We're born selfish, and people are trying to kind of detach this from our morality, and this is why it's so destructive. In a capitalist environment, if you get to keep what you have, what you make, it drives you to do more, and it brings the best in you. So this is why I think the combination of free trade and the rule of law is what the capitalist system really offers us.
Right. And then just to wrap it up here, the only thing you have to have is you have to have just laws, right? And not all laws are just. And so
I would call it objective laws.
Right. Yeah. And hopefully the people get the chance to change them when they're not just, right? Exactly. So very good. Now, you've got people out there like Elizabeth Warren and AOC saying, well, if you have over $50 million, you should have a wealth tax of 2% per year so you can have less every year.
And the question is why? Why? Where's the logic here?
Their logic would be, hey, we'll redistribute that wealth and give it to people who need it more, right? By their standards.
The only question I have for them is why? Why take my money with a force, with a gun?
Yeah, because that's what every law comes down to is a gun and a jail cell. Okay, that's what every law ends in, a gun and a jail cell.
So you don't see the contradiction? Like, you want to push the gun away so we all live freely? And you have to really understand it's all basically down to morality. Elizabeth Warren believes that the good is to give others, to sacrifice. And by the way, this is why OAC is so dangerous, because she identifies the moral foundation. When she's asked, how are you going to implement the new Green Deal? She says, I don't really care. It's the right thing to do. So she would rather see people, I'm assuming.
The means justifies the end. Here we are at Karl Marx, right? Look at every place on earth and every time on history, these ideas have failed repeatedly. And yet you still have these idiots that want to do this experiment again. They've done nothing more than oppress people. They're responsible for the deaths of over 150 million people in the last century. This is scary stuff, and people should view it that way. Give out your website and any closing thoughts you have.
Yeah, so Jason, my closing thoughts would be, it comes back to haunt us because we don't understand the moral foundation of all of this. We won't see any other results if we don't change the morality of the left to an objective morality. Yeah, I want to let people know that the Ayn Rand Institute just launched a new mobile app. It's called the Ayn Rand University. Just look for it on Android and on iOS. And we have an amazing campus that has a lot of introductory content and advanced content to learn about Rand herself and Objetivism in AynRand.org.
That's great. Excellent. Tal, thanks for joining me today, and keep getting the good word out there.
Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.